Okay, so let's talk about routes in Laravel. In our initial videos, we have talked about a very basic information about routes. In this lecture, we are going to cover more deeper things in the route section of the Laravel. So let's open up our web.php, and by the way, I am using the PHP Storm. So by hitting the double shift, it opens the search box or the search dialog box, and I just search for any file and it gives me that file. All right, so we have talked about like we can set the path of our any endpoint in the application by defining the route and then get, and then whatever we pass in as the first parameter, this will be the URI. So if I say about us and I say like instead of echo, so let's return about us. All right, so if we check that, we should be able to see the about us page here like so. So now the about us page is visible, but there are more things in the route except these things. So the first argument that it accepts is basically the URI. The second is the callback function. Later on we will see like how we can use the controllers here instead of these callback functions, because these callback functions can be used for small or static websites, whereas if you are going to develop a large scale application or a medium sized application, we need to create controllers and then point to those controller methods there. All right, so let's see what other things we have in route. So first of all, we can also name the route as well. So before that, let's open our welcome.blade and let's create a copy of that, and I will name it as for example index, and just quickly remove everything from here and just load the HTML5 template, and let's create some anchor tags here. So I will say href, I would say home, and then about us, or maybe contact us as well. All right, so now if I want to link the route here, what should I do? Like for example, I want to point out to a certain page, navigate to a certain page, what should I do? The first option is I could say URL about us. By the way, we can also use the URL. So this is another method apart from routes. So this will take us to the about us page. So for example, if I go and take a look at our home page, so we are navigating pointing to this welcome. So instead of that, let's point out to the index here, and now we have the like home, about us, and contact us. So let me quickly change this about us to here. All right, it's like so, and if I click on about us, so we are now navigating to about us page. But how we are actually including the route here? We are not including the routes here. So what we can do in order to use the route here, we can also point out to this route here. So what will happen if I, instead of URL, I type in the route here? So if I reload the page, so now this keeps on going and it will say like the route about us is not defined. What does it mean? It means like whenever we create a route and we want to point out the route to any URL, we need to give the name of the route instead of like the normal approach where we use the URL here. And later on, for example, let's say in my route, if I change this to about page, for example, and if I click back, if I go to about us, so you will see like it will say like 404, it's not found there. The reason is that because the route here is now changed to about us. So for example, now if I say let's give it a name here, and I will say about us page, about us. And now if I copy that, and in place of URL, let's change this to route, and then use this as the name of the route. So if I now click back and if I navigate to the main page, now if I click on about us, you can see we are still going to the about us page. Now what's the benefit of using that? For example, we have named it as a about us. Now later on in our maybe in future we want to change this about us to about, and we change the URL. So now if I go back, if I reload the page, now you can see that it is automatically pointing to about. The reason is that because we are using the name routes here. All right, what next? We can also give the name to any certain group of routes, but we will cover that later. Let's talk about prefixes. So for example, if I want to prefix any URL, for example, let's say I would say like user and about us. Now I want this user prefix to be linked to all other routes. So how can I do that? So the one way is like I should point the user here, and but whatever the URL is called, we create. So I should type in user here manually. Or the other way is, so in order to set the prefix of our all routes, we should do something like route and then set the prefix. Inside the prefix, I will name it, give the prefix of it something like user, and then I will group all these routes within the function. All right, so I will copy this and paste it here, and let's actually remove this route from here, because if we are going to access our the main domain, so it should not receive this URL, so it will obviously give us an error. So let's say I want to give this user the prefix of about us page and the contact us page as well. So I should say it as contact us and rename it to contact us, and also let's say contact us here, and let's also give the name to this route as well. So let's say home, we have about us and contact us. So let's give the href here as well, and we now have home here, and we can now point out to the contact us as well. So now if I reload the page and if I click on home, you see that we are still going to this URL. But if I click on about us, now you can see we have a prefix of user, and if I go to users, contact us, and we should also have the user prefix here. One other thing is like we can give the name to all these routes by default. So the default name we can also give it as well. So what I should do is basically give this a name, and I should say for example basics dot. All right, so basics dot about us and basics dot contact us. So I should point out to this like contact us and basics dot about us. If I reload, now you should see like it still works. All right, and we also have the user here. If I click on contact us, and still things working. Now the last thing before concluding this lecture is we can also wrap all these things in the middleware. All right, so the one middleware, we have two middlewares by default in the Laravel. The first middleware is basically open for everyone. For example, if anyone who is not authenticated can access these pages. But there is another middleware which authenticates the user and only displays those pages if the user is authenticated. So first of all, let's take a look at the open public URLs. So for that, I should say it as after the name, we can also set to this as middleware, and inside the middleware we can either pass one middleware or we can also pass the array of middlewares. So I will call it as guest. So the guest is basically the first middleware, which is basically the public or the open. So if I am not logged in, I can access any page. But if in future, when we are going to inject our authentication here, the login page, so once the user will be logged in, so the user will no longer be able to access these routes just because of this guest middleware. All right. Now there is another middleware which is called the web middleware. Now what this web middleware does, so let's quickly go to the middleware settings and we will see like what this web middleware contains. Alright, so in order to check the middlewares, like what web middleware does, we need to go to the app and / kernel.php. So it's inside the app, http and kernel.php. Now here you can see like a group of middlewares, which is basically an array which contains the web middleware. So what web middleware contains is basically it encrypts the cookies whenever the URL is called. It adds the cookie to response, it starts the sessions, it verifies the CSRF token, and lots of things it does out of the box. All right, so this is the functionality of web middleware. If I reload the page, you see like everything still works without any error. But there is another middleware. If I, instead of guest, if I change this to auth middleware and I reload the page, so now I can still access the main, but if I click on home, this is saying like the route login not defined. This is the default behavior of the auth middleware. We will see like how we can overcome this problem. But for the auth middleware, if we do not define any login route, so auth middleware automatically points to the login route if the user is not authenticated. So let's create another route and name it as, for example, let's say login, and give this a name of login and just return instead of the view. So let's return login page. And if I revert back this guest to auth, reload the page, now you can see that we are now on a login page. But if I try to access the contact us page again, this is automatically pointing us to the login because we first need to log in, then we can access these pages. Now if I reload the page and go to the user / contact us, it still works. Now there is last middleware before we conclude this video, which is called the throttle. Now what this throttle middleware does, it basically restricts your URL if the requests are exceeding. For example, you can control this URL to only access by one API for maybe 3 or 4 times in 1 minute, and then it if it is accessed more than those requests, then there should be automatically an error page displayed. So let's take a look at here. So if I say let's throttle this to, for example, let's say 10 requests per minute, and if I start reloading this page again and again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the 10 is one. Now the 11th time I hit and it says like too many requests per minute. So I am now blocked to access these pages for 1 minute. All right. After that, I should be able to access those pages back. Now this is really important when it comes to the APIs. So we will also deal these things later on in the maybe upcoming videos. All right. So we have learned about basic routes, the get methods. We have talked about the prefixes. We have talked about the names, middlewares, and so much. Now in the upcoming videos, in the next lecture, we will also see the other methods which we have, except apart from get. We also have the post method, we have put method, we have patch method, and we also have delete method. But obviously we cannot cover those right now because we are not only right now we are not actually diving into any front-end framework or front-end functionality, because those endpoints or those methods of the route required some kind of forms, or in order to delete the action, the delete is used to delete those things. We will also obviously we will cover those things, every point we will cover, but later on in the videos when we will deep dive into more of the lectures. So that's about it, and I will see you in the next one.